We have a great panel today. According to USDA, 13.5 million people in the U.S. have limited access to a supermarket or large grocery store. 82% of those people live in urban areas. On top of that, 40% of the population lives more than 1 mile away from a grocery store, which poses a problem for people who don't have cars if they want to get groceries. So when the only nearby options are low nutrient foods at high prices coupled with low awareness or knowledge on nutrition, it has consequences for income inequality and public health. So I'm here today with 3 people who are working to end this. They represent organizations that are tackling the issue of food access and education. We have, first off, Abhi Ramesh, who's the founder and CEO of Misfits Markets based in Philadelphia. We have Lela Klein, who's the founder of the Greater Dayton Union Co-op Initiative in Ohio. And Liz Carollo, who's the assistant director of Greenmarket, a program of GrowNYC here in New York. So Abhi, tell me a little bit about Misfits Market.
Yeah, sure. So some of you may have seen our ads on social media or the subway station here, but in a nutshell, we work with growers and manufacturers across the country to buy produce and other food items that wouldn't get sold through traditional channels, through grocery stores, for reasons that we think are somewhat irrational. We buy that stuff, we repack it, and we ship it directly to household. So it's kind of the ugly produce subscription service that you may have heard of that we do.
Lela.
Well, I'd love to acknowledge one of my co-founders is in the room. I can't see past the lights, but Amaha Selassie is here with me. We are a community-driven movement in Dayton, Ohio, to create a cooperatively owned grocery store owned by both the customers and the employees. Dayton is a community that's lost tens of thousands of good jobs, and with those good jobs have gone many of the services that we rely on. And so we're trying to create a different economic model that is accountable to us and designed around the needs of the community. And so we're doing a bricks and mortar grocery store, and we just broke ground on construction about a week ago. Thanks.
Great. Liz Carollo from Greenmarket, a program of GrowNYC. GrowNYC is an environmental nonprofit that I'm sure many, if not all of you, utilize our essential services that we provide across all 5 boroughs, whether you're visiting a Greenmarket youth market or you're a fresh food box customer, one of the many community gardens that we've built and maintained. Maybe your kids go on a school tour. I saw my colleague Tutu out there. She runs our youth ed program, so kids can go on a school tour at Market. Participate in our Beginning Farmer program. So we run a suite of programs throughout the 5 boroughs to distribute food, raise environmental awareness, and provide services, compost and recycling education, that kind of thing. Our GrowNYC Grains program has been at the forefront of pioneering the reinvigoration of grain growing in the Northeast. So I wanted to shout that out because I know that everybody got very excited about the potential for buying delicious barley during Dan's. We sell barley, we sell that barley. We've partnered with Cornell and Oregon State. We have that specific barley he was talking about that we sell at our grain stand on Wednesdays and Saturdays at Union Square. And don't worry, we accosted Dan in the green room and told him as much. So he also knows now. So yeah, but plenty of other delicious grains and flours also there.
So we have 3 models of food distribution here. We have sort of the delivery model from Misfits Market, we have the brick and mortar grocery store, and then we have farmers markets. Of those 3, how can you decide which model is best for a certain population?
I will jump in and say, as someone who just finished raising the capital necessary to build in bricks and mortar, I would say proceed with caution. It's been really challenging and a very long process. It's taken people from across our community, every corner of our community has had to get involved, including we're about to close on a new market tax credit deal. We've had to learn all about finance. And so there are hopefully there are faster solutions. On the other hand, it's been amazing, and it's this very visible, powerful thing, and once we have it, we will have a bricks and mortar market, and so, there's positives as well.
Great. I mean, through GrowNYC runs a wholesale distribution wing called Greenmarket Co., and Greenmarket Co. works out of 5,000 square feet in the South Bronx. We aggregate product from medium-sized growers, 90% of which are from New York State, and we redistribute that out to primarily underserved communities through to institutions, food pantries, restaurants, and then our own food programs, food retail programs, not Greenmarket, but Youth Market, which are youth-run farm stands, of which we run 15, and fresh food box distribution sites, of which we have 13. And fresh food box distribution sites, you pay just 1 week in advance, $14, and you get $20 to $30 worth of locally grown produce to take home, and you only have to pay for the week in advance, so it's not a big upfront cost. So we have models that fit pretty much any neighborhood, and on top of that, we train community groups to run their own food distribution programs, and have trained 50 and supply 30 currently. So we just try to be as nimble and efficient as possible, which we're able to do as a nonprofit, and distribute produce into all corners of New York City.
Yeah, I'll echo Lela as well and say, we've spent the last year trying to figure out how to ship boxes of produce from a centralized distribution center to any zip code in the state. And I'll also say proceed with caution if you want to try to do that as well. But in essence, our model is, when we launch in a state, we launch in such a way that we ship to every single zip code in that state, which is quite a bit different from a lot of other delivery services or grocery delivery platforms out there where they're kind of zip code concentrated or zip code centric. Our view is that, hey, if you're shipping to a dense metropolitan area, there's a bunch of other options out there for those consumers, whereas for the suburban areas or the food deserts that are outside of urban areas, there are very few options. And so we have a 40-person ops team that is dedicated simply to figure out how to get a box from our warehouse to a doorstep in an affordable, eco-friendly way. And it's a problem that we still haven't solved, we're working on, but that's currently our approach.
So, as a small startup, let's say there are people in our audience or people watching on the live stream who live near an area that could be characterized as a food desert, who want to do something about it. What are some tips on getting started? I know that Lela and Liz, you talked about collaborations with universities. Is that a good first step in seeing what bigger entities are out there that could help out?
I would say start with the folks who have the most knowledge, which is the people who have the lived experience of living in the area that's impacted. So we started as a community organizing project, and we were in a room that included folks in the neighborhood, including community leaders, including faith community, labor, local government, and academia, and certainly it was helpful to have folks from a university. We spent the first year just doing research, just really trying to understand our problem. We did an opportunity map of our city. We had a huge participatory process that brought in lots of voices, and I don't think you can actually shortcut that. I don't think that's something you can just fast forward through. Once we had done that, then we started focusing on building out a business plan and understanding wholesalers and retail. But I would say the first step is real grassroots community organizing, and there are no shortcuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with us. We work with community partners that already exist and have worked in neighborhoods for many years, have the skills, knowledge, and interest already, and just call on us because we have the help. We can help build capacity in terms of creating your own food distribution site. So like I said, we've trained 50 community organizations already. We supply 30 currently because Greenmarket, as part of GrowNYC, turns 50 this year. For almost 46 years, we've worked with small farms within the region to distribute food throughout New York City. So we have this enormous knowledge base already. We have some built infrastructure. We're building more. And so we are able to help those small community groups that want to distribute food back into their own community do that through training, technical support throughout the year, and then just being able to get them fresh local food at a really affordable price. But then on top of that, we work with universities to, all kinds of things in terms of developing new breeds of seeds, training small farmers, the universities within the city that help us do nutrition education. And so yeah, endless, especially here, just endless partnerships, and we try to go after all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them had really, really good points. I'd say it's, if you're in a food desert area or looking to like revitalize, ultimately, there's two sides of the equation you're looking to solve. Like one is the actual, like the product and inventory of the food that you need to get there, and then the second piece is the actual delivery infrastructure. And at the end of the day, you have to have both to solve the food desert problem. And I think there are usually, I won't say always, but there are usually resources that you can kind of piggyback off of to get some of that stuff done. I think, when you look at the delivery infrastructure side, there are, and this is one thing that we learned just by exploring a Misfits market, there are, refrigerated trucks that go all across the country. They may not be delivering to the food desert in particular that you're looking at, but they may be going by there. So if there's a way of sort of piggybacking off that infrastructure by talking to, like the C.H. Robinsons or the big shippers of the world, there might be a way of essentially being like, hey, there's 4 pallets of room in this truck that's going by this city but not stopping there. Can we piggyback off that 4 pallets of space and then drop off the food? And then you have the delivery infrastructure problem somewhat solved. Then you figure out a way to find the actual food. So we kind of approach it in that way, like those are the two sides of it. Usually there's a solution for both in most food deserts you're looking at, but you can almost always find a solution for one, and you have to be creative for the other.
So this is my last question before we go to Q&A. There's been a lot of news and talk about grocery stores in areas closing down, and what comes up in its place is a dollar store where they don't sell fresh fruit and vegetables. They sell packaged and processed foods. Would you see this trend, stalling or going down? I know that you all three are working very hard to reverse this, but where do you see things going?
I think, so we had at one of the grocery stores in our community burned down several years ago, and the owner, it was a mom and pop, the owner was underinsured and couldn't rebuild, and that specific store served a population that was had a large Turkish immigrant population that relied on the fresh produce, and that physical location is being replaced by a Dollar General, which is very depressing. We have looked to cities like Tulsa that have looked at zoning regulations, like can we look at for example, in the neighborhood I live in, you can walk to $3 stores. Could we pass zoning laws that if not fully restrict dollar stores, maybe make it so that you can't have more than 2 in a mile or something like that? We're also in our city exploring kind of nuisance complaints. It seems like many of the dollar stores models involve having like 1 employee in the store at any given time. And so at least in Dayton, Ohio, you walk into a dollar store and it is like a mess. Like there's merchandise on the floor, the parking lot's terrible. And so we've actually seen neighborhood groups bringing nuisance complaints around dollar stores. I think though generally these are kind of small community-based solutions. I think the dollar store is on the march, and they do see our communities as a place where they can extract resources. And they don't bring a lot of value, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very important for us always to keep in mind that everybody wants to feed their families fresh fruits and vegetables and cook warm, healthy meals for their families. And you've heard it a bunch this weekend and recently. Food desert is kind of an inaccurate term because so many neighborhoods are full of tons of food. It's just bad food. And without the proper supports for small farms, medium-sized farms, and those of us trying to distribute fresh foods into underserved neighborhoods that have been abandoned by big distributors, we need those supports. We need financial support and public support for getting that food into every neighborhood that needs it and wants it, and that is every neighborhood. Every neighborhood wants it. So I think that there's some misconception that people like unhealthy food, and that's, everybody likes a little bit of unhealthy food. But everybody wants access to fresh fruits and vegetables, so.
100%. And the other kind of piece I'll add to that is kind of looking at like the affordability angle of it as well, because I think like these Dollar General-esque platforms and their communities are like, yeah, like you can come in here and buy these random unhealthy packaged goods for like 50 cents or for $1. One of the things that we've been spending a lot of time looking at is like, how do you provide like fresh food, fresh fruits and vegetables to communities at a really affordable price, to the point where it's as the same price or even cheaper to buy apples and oranges as it is to buy like Cheetos and whatever else. And I think like the food waste problem that we've heard about a lot can help us get there because we have so much of this food across the country at a lot of these farms at the farm level that's not being sold for somewhat irrational reasons. And so if we can repurpose that and we can provide that to these communities at a big discount, then you have that other option. You can actually provide fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables to communities for a big discount to like regular retail prices.
All right, do we have any questions from the audience? Can't quite see.
Thank you all for being here today. My question, Abhi, is for you mostly. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your pilot program to accept SNAP EBT and how we can encourage food delivery companies to do so.
Yes. Who am I looking at, by the way?
Right here.
It's very dark. Oh, hi. How's it going?
Good.
Yes. So it's been an interesting uphill battle, and just to kind of to repeat the question. So it's about kind of the pilot programs that are currently in place around online food retailers accepting SNAP EBT and food stamps for payment. So we've been basically approaching it sort of a shotgun approach, where one side's been like approaching policymakers to try to be like, hey, why is it that these massive, not super helpful offline institutions can accept food stamps and EBT, but we're providing affordable fresh produce to someone online, a better model, but we can't accept it. So trying to figure out a way to go through policymakers. And then the other approach has been essentially through partnerships and associations. So trying to figure out other entities that currently can accept SNAP EBT offline and essentially partnering with them and either selling our inventory through their channels or basically stocking their physical stores with Misfits Market produce that they can then accept SNAP for. Honestly, it's been an uphill battle, I would say. I think I know there's a tremendous amount of red tape. I think the institutions that govern the acceptance of SNAP EBT are archaic, I would say, for lack of a better term. And so far, I know that there's a very small pilot program that a handful of large online retailers, the likes of Amazon, were accepted into about 4 or 5 years ago, but there hasn't been too much that's come out of the results of that pilot program. So we've been pushing across the board to see what there is that we can do, but TBD, essentially.
This person right here? I think there's a mic coming down for you. Yes.
I want to find out more about the distribution side, because while I understand we're in an urban area, it seems to me the hardest part of food distribution is into rural areas. And on some of the nations west, they're something like 50% poverty, and kids are really needing fresh food. Some of it's being grown there, but how do we get resources to those areas that aren't heavily concentrated with people and resources?
Yeah, I can kind of help answer part of that. So we have a really interesting. So I mentioned it before. When we launch in a region or in a state, we basically open up deliveries to every single zip code in that state. So take Ohio, for example. We launch in every single zip code in Ohio, and we launch there. And we have a map internally, a kind of a dashboard, and we see orders coming in and basically like plot where they are in the state. And what's been fascinating so far is every state we've launched in, the dense metropolitan areas represent a significant minority of orders that come in when we launch, and it's everywhere else in the state that actually represents the majority of orders. And New York is even more pronounced, whereas New York City and Metro New York City was like 28% of the orders we had in New York State, and then everywhere else in New York was the other 72%, whatever that math is. And that continues to be the case in all these other states. So it is the case that the demand is there in a lot of these kind of more rural areas, and it's a question of how you can get there. Our view is that there's a lot of existing infrastructure that, like I alluded to before, we can piggyback off of. And so we kind of look at all the we look at rail and truck lanes throughout a lot of major states. We essentially look at where we can kind of piggyback off those. We partner with some of the largest refrigerated 3PLs in the country to figure out a way to essentially get our produce to a lot of these cities in existing lanes. We do things like we pre-sort all of our boxes based on the zip codes they're going to, and essentially allows us to achieve a cheaper shipping rate to get to some of those more rural areas.
Can you explain what 3PL is?
Sorry, 3PLs, like third-party logistics providers. So there's hundreds of them in the country, probably thousands of them that deal with refrigerated freight, and most of them are contracted by a lot of the large food companies, and they'll take large food company and 20 trucks a week that will go across the country delivering them. But when you go across the country, you're driving through a lot of these rural areas that need food. So there is kind of a strategy in terms of kind of piggybacking off of that existing infrastructure. But the tough thing will be, until you get the critical volume required, you lose money on those deliveries, and we do as well. But our view is that long term, if we can get the volume required in a lot of these rural areas, and we think the demand's there, then it'll make sense.
I want to jump in and point out sort of one major market failure that we're experiencing is, as a small bricks and mortar in the middle of America's breadbasket, it is significantly logistically easier for us to get produce delivered from our wholesaler's warehouse in Nashville than it is for us to do local procurement. That is just really, really challenging and takes a lot of labor hours. It's why I'm so intrigued and want to learn more about your model. But that's something that I just think all of us in this room should think about solving, how do we strengthen local food systems, and yeah.
Great. Well, Liz, did you want to?
No, I'm good.
Well, thank you so much. I think we'll wrap up with that. Thanks, everyone.